I'm here with, I would call him a friend, NEVIS, one of the most famous Caribbean person in Maryland. I would say, as to go as far as say, maybe not in Maryland, but at least in PG County, Maryland. He originally from Cotton Ground, NEVIS, migrated to St. Croix, and now live in Maryland, in the Washington D.C. suburb. And the important thing about him is that he survived the Christina disaster at only 10 years old. He was just a little boy on that boat coming from St. Kitts and survived. What I'm going to do is to let him tell his story, and Sarge, you could go into as much detail as you want, or how many things you want. Loughton Sargeant, you related to Livingston Sargeant, right?
Yeah, man, Livingston is my uncle.
Okay.
My uncle, that's my mother's brother. But basically, I'm happy to be here. I can't believe I got 50 years least on my life. So today is a very special day, and believe it or not, the date, August 1st, 1970, was a Saturday. And today, August 1st, 2020, is a Saturday.
Wow.
Quite ironic, eh?
Wow.
50 years.
50 years ago.
50 years ago on a Saturday.
So,
and basically...
How you come to actually get on the boat and stuff? I mean...
Yeah, but you know, back in those days, I traveled quite frequently to St. Kitts. My aunt, Ophelia Sargeant, Babe, affectionately known as Babe, she lived in St. Kitts. My dad, Stanley Frank Jr., he also lived in St. Kitts. And plus I had other relatives. But that particular week, I went to St. Kitts primarily was to repair my bicycle wheel. I had a bicycle that had a flat and it needed a patch. And at the time, St. Kitts was the only place I could go to get that patch fixed.
You understand what that means?
Yeah.
That's how it used to be back then. To do just a little thing, you had to go to St. Kitts.
Yeah, so I went to St. Kitts to get my bicycle wheel patch and also to visit my aunt. And at 10 years old, back in NEVIS, I felt I was, in hindsight now, 10 years old, that's really small.
Yeah, that's really
but I felt I was a big man. Because I traveled by myself. I actually traveled to St. Kitts by myself and came back by myself. But anyway, so I traveled down to St. Kitts. My grandmother put me on the boat, and then my aunt picked me up on the other end, And that was quite normal. And back then, when you travel, you dress up. So I was dressed up in my my polyester pant and dress shoes and, the works. Sharp. You got to be sharp to go to St. Kitts, man, I remember that very well. So, but I was there, I think I was probably in St. Kitts maybe over a week. Probably over a week.
Oh, so you didn't go down the Saturday?
No, I didn't go down Saturday. I went, a few days before. Funny enough, the Friday, and I didn't know until the after the fact that my aunt, Dormot Jones' mom, that's
Jones.
Gwendolyn Jones, that's my aunt.
Dormot Jones used to play cricket for NEVIS.
Right, yes. And also my grandmother, Angie Sargeant, they went to St. Kitts on the Friday.
Okay.
And they came back on the Friday, and basically they told me that the boat barely made it back to NEVIS that Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, they said the boat barely made it back. So it's obviously that something was wrong, but no one kind of honed into it. It was basically a busy weekend, and just, the boat keep going back and forth. So that Saturday afternoon, August 1st, was the day that I returned. I was dropped off on the pier and came on the boat. And on a few occasions, when the Christina left, it actually came back to pick up more passengers. So it was like 2 or 3 times it left and came. I'm telling you, we left the pier, and then they shout out, hey, somebody. The bunting went back, pick up. And the last person it picked up, from what I recall, I remember that it was a little girl with one of those big, long dolly. The dolly was bigger than the girl. And they kind of just threw her on the boat.
And something, I met this sister. It was the sister of the girl. Remember, I told you about, I met the sister of that little girl, and she was telling me the story that her sister went up to NEVIS with a dolly, and the sister didn't want to go. She was crying,
yeah.
really, really crying, and she didn't make it.
Well,
But,
that was the
safe.
last. That was the last person that
That
came on the boat. And the funny thing about that Saturday, right? The water was extremely calm. I mean, seriously, no wave. You know, sometimes the water choppy, beautiful. So as we sail along, and I used to always wonder back in those days, why these guys travel so far out, because they will go from point A to point B. So Sargeant Wharf to NEVIS Wharf. And it seemed like they have like a straight line, and they just go straight, 11 miles straight. But if you look at how the islands are situated, you could travel along from Sargeant all the way
to the coast.
Yes. Right along to Knoxhead.
Yes.
But if you look at where Christina sang, we were way out off of way from Knoxhead.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my analogy there is that if Christina was closer to the bank, a lot more people could have survived. I'm just saying.
Let me ask you this. In terms of, can you describe like the ship and how many people were on it and how it was, and do you have was it just people, what, animals?
No, I was going to get to that, yeah, because what happened now, so in traveling on the Christina, I was on the lower deck, on the left side. So if we're going up towards NEVIS, I was on the left, lower deck. Christina had 2 decks, and both, well, I know for sure the lower deck was not wide open. It was partially open. There was some like design like opening.
And the deck enclosed? It was enclosed?
It was enclosed, you know? So it was partially open, not fully. You know, some of these boats is wide open, and you could, and even most of the boats I see travel today, they're pretty much closed in. You know, you go in, it's closed in. But Christina was partially closed. There's some openings, some wide openings as you go along. And then right where the lower part of the boat is, where the water, there were some little holes. So the boat was low, and you can actually see the water seeping in.
You can see the water seeping?
Absolutely. The boat was, because what happened, the boat was fully loaded with people, cargo. I even think he probably had a vehicle on there. It was totally packed. I'm telling you, ram packed. So most people were standing. They were standing room only.
Standing room only.
Standing room only. And what happened, before the boat sank, he had this guy from Sargeant. Somebody told me that he was a Calypsonian, but I know him. And he kept saying, but he was drunk, intoxicated, man, just talking stuff, right? People laughing, joking. But he keeps saying, there's a black jumbie on the boat. There's a black jumbie on the boat. And the older folks would be telling him, boy, what are you talking about? You know, shut up your mouth, you know, keep quiet. And the boat kept going. But still, you know, very eerie, that they were very low to the water. And the water was calm. And just out of nowhere, man, nobody was expecting it. But I was just minding my own business. And when I look over to the right, I just saw like the ocean just open up its mouth. That's exactly what it looked like. It's like you just open its mouth and just swallow the boat. And all you heard was just screaming and crying. And next thing I know, like I always tell people, at 10 years old, I don't remember jumping in the water. I don't know how I get in the water. That's number one. But all I know, after the ocean swallowed the boat,
So it sank immediately?
No, but slowly. But I mean, Christina went down within a few minutes. It was gone. Yeah. So, but when it first opened up, and then the boat is in the water going down, but you have hundreds of people screaming, shouting, people holding. I mean, I've had people holding on my neck, pulling, because you know, when you're panicking and you're in the seawater, you grab at anything. And I was there. I mean, just trying to understand what happened, you know, what's going on here, you know?
So how did he go down? He got on the left side, front side, back side?
No, he went down on the side, on the right side. On the right side, he went down just like that, right? But
so like he tilt over?
Yeah, think about it, right? The only way I could think of it is like, think of somebody in the boat, just take their hand and pull on the boat. That's how it happened. That's how it felt like to me. Like because it was no warning that the boat was rocking or something. Nothing. I'm telling you. To me, it was just like a normal trip. From what I understand, some people said that it started raining, drizzling, and people kind of rushed to one side. But you remember now, I was downstairs, so all of this that I'm hearing probably happened upstairs.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right, so that's what I'm understanding, that a lot of people rushed to the right side, and that's what caused the boat to tilt. But for me, personally, all I knew, basically, just my story, what I saw and what I experienced, was that the ocean opened up, swallowed the boat. There were hundreds of people in the water screaming and crying. Women, children, men, and at one point, while we're in the water, there was a fishing, we call them a sailing boat back then. A fishing boat came right on the scene from Cotton Gong just up, came on the scene. And one of my childhood friends was on the boat. This guy that used to play the kettle drum with the big drum back in Cotton Gong, Walla. It was one of Walla's son. He was on the boat. And he came right in front of me, man, and he said, "Oh, look, Loughton." And then Peter Turkey, who is, we call him Manny, but Calypso Wheeler's father. He was the older guy on the boat. But I think they panicked and they took off.
They didn't take up anybody?
Not to my knowledge. So and after the fact, I heard that they probably grabbed the Budgeon, the Budgeon's wife. Because the boat belongs to Budgeon. The Budgeon's boat, and I heard that they grabbed his wife. They grabbed his wife.
Okay.
And then they took off. Because I don't know how they were able to point it out, but from what I understand, I don't remember seeing anybody go in the boat. But when these kind of things happen, you ain't seeing nothing. You want to know. All I was trying to hope is that he said, "Look, Loughton," and that.
But that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. When they took off, man, that was like one of the saddest moments, because now here all these people now started, people just started disappearing. Those who couldn't swim was swimming towards Niagara Falls.
Okay.
Those who couldn't swim was just dying. And those who could float, which was like me, in the case of me, was there. But the funny thing is that before I understood what was really going on, the Christina took me down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went down with the boat? Absolutely
went down. Because the suction of where we were.
Yes.
And when the boat went down, I actually felt Christina on my head.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me down. The boat was on my head and took me down.
And you were 10 years old?
10 years old. I remember that so well. So when they took me down, that was it. I didn't remember nothing else. All I remember is that I saw this little light. It's like my body was floating from eternity coming up. And I remember seeing this light. When you're underwater,
you could look
up and you see the sun.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that little light. And I remember my body just floating, like it was like an eternity, man, coming up. And I seen the light. And then next thing I remember, I was on top of the ocean. I was back on level, right?
People were still up there?
Nobody.
Nobody was up there?
When I came back, it was eerie silent. Not a word, not a whisper.
You mean everybody died at that time?
But whoever done died, gone. Whoever could swim, gone. Christina done gone. So the only thing was there when I came up was me, I alone, in the water. Floating, trying to just... And back then I was young.
How you think you survived?
I'm going to tell you, hold on. I'll give you the story. I'll give you everything that happened, point to point.
Okay.
So, my body floated back up, okay? When I came back under the water, it was eerie silence. A matter of fact, I started seeing like bodies floating. A matter of fact, I saw this white, I always remember this, a kind of heavy-set white guy floated in front of me. And I remember the young kid had expensive watch on his hand, right?
And that's the only thing you were thinking about?
I said, boy, look at that watch, right? Yeah, but he was dead. But he was floating. His body actually floated in front of me, right?
And so you were like in the water, dog pedaling or something?
Yeah, staying afloat. Because you remember now, I was not a strong swimmer at age 10. But one thing we learned in Cotton Gong, we had a pond there nearby Nelson Spring. We actually learned how to swim there and the seawater. Okay. So even though I was not one of the, I could tell you, some of the best swimmers in NEVIS and Cotton Gong, drown on Christina.
Wow.
I'm telling you. But unfortunate for me, I knew how to float. So I was floating. I wasn't really swimming because I don't know where am I swimming to? You know, I wasn't even thinking that, oh, look, the land is here. I was just trying to, hey, stay afloat and survive. 10 years old, I wasn't crying. I wasn't panicking because I think if I was a little older, I probably would not have survived. Because, you know, one thing you learn about the seawater, when you panic, that's the worst thing that could happen. So I was very calm. I had my sharp polyester suit. It was a brown polyester pant.
Yeah, I remember.
And I had
like a corduroy pants.
Yeah, I had a nice boiler. And then I had a a striped blue, light sky blue polyester shirt. And I had a nice dress, some brown shoes, hard brown shoes, man. So I was really sharp.
And you still had them on when the boat?
Huh?
You still had them on in the water?
I mean, but as 10 years old, you're not thinking that, boy, look, let me take these off. I was dressed exactly how I dressed when I went on the boat. That's how I got picked out of the water. So I'm going to give you the story how I got there. So, and the one, let me just inject quickly. Let me just inject quickly. My bicycle wheel that I went to sink it to get repaired. You know, I was proud coming back because I was a very good bike rider at that time. And I was very upset that my bicycle wheel, I lost my bicycle wheel. I mean, you know, how I know that Christina sink and my bicycle wheel gone. You know what I mean? I ain't even thinking about, well, other people die and all. Because at 10 years old, I'm telling you,
what's important to you.
You don't really think about the bigger picture. You know, that's all I knew was that Christina sank, a lot of people died, and I lost my bicycle wheel. You know, very, very upset, very emotional for me. So, anyway, so I was in the water, paddling, because like I said, everything is gone now. No Christina, nobody around, just me and God in this deep water. And I always felt that my grandfather played such a role in my life. My grandfather died May of 1970.
Okay.
The only
a couple
man,
months before.
Yeah, man. The only man I ever loved in my life. He was like my everything, my grandfather. They call him Dan Sargeant. And like I said, I didn't do nothing to jump off the boat. I didn't do anything to escape when Christina took me down. And I was just in the water. Yeah, for quite a while. I mean, because remember, Christina sank around 4:15 around that time, right? I was in the water until 5:30. The sun was actually going. When they picked me out of the water, it was already dark. So can you imagine being in the water that long?
Yeah.
But before all that time, while I'm in the water, and it's like the miracle and why I'm alive today. Out of nowhere, Obi, I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened. I'm in the water, paddling, trying to hold on, you know? And one of the benches from Christina, one of the wooden bench, all of a sudden just float.
Right in front of you.
And I'm telling you, Christina been long gone now. Long time gone. Nothing around. And one of the benches from Christina just float right in front of me.
He probably came back up. He came back up out the water.
They probably never went down. But what I'm saying though is that it seemed like it was delivered to me because I didn't have to swim towards it. I didn't like see it like, oh, there's a bench wide over there. Let me go and get it. It came right in front of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I held on to that bench. And I was in the water until, like I said, the sun was going down. Nothing. Quiet. Eerie quiet. No sound, nothing. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, right? I started hearing this noise, like a fainted noise, like an engine, right? It's nice and soft. And then it kept getting louder and louder. And I said, somebody's around, right? And it started getting loud. And as the noise get louder, I start screaming, man, help, help. They're screaming the loudest I can, so that at least they could hear me. And apparently they did, because as I screamed, the boat kept up coming closer and closer. And it was a small speedboat from St. Kitts.
Okay.
And I would love to know to this day who that person was, because I never got any name. All I knew, they came, they snatched me out of the water. And when they snatched me, there was a lady in the boat that they had picked up out of the water, and she was barely alive. You can tell she was breathing, and I don't think that she survived. But they had that lady in the boat, and they had me. And what they were doing back then, all of the survivors from Christina, they were taking all of the survivors that they picked out of the water to the Sea Hunter. The Sea Hunter was a boat owned by Cliff Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Sea Hunter was stationed in the water, and all of the people that they plucked from the water, they were taken to the Sea Hunter, and then Sea Hunter will bring you ashore. Okay. Right? So they plucked me from the water, and they took me to the Sea Hunter. And I got to the Sea Hunter, and there were a few survivors in there, maybe like 10, 12, maybe a little more. And the first person I saw when I came on the Sea Hunter was my uncle Livingston.
Livingston Sargeant.
Yeah. I didn't know, believe me, I never knew Livingston was. He didn't know I was on the boat. I didn't know he was on the boat.
When you got 300 and something people, you probably couldn't see him.
Yeah, but he was upstairs, and my understanding, a few years ago, we had a family reunion here in Maryland, and one of the guys who actually helped him was a relative of ours, and from my grandmother's side, he was a Francis. He lived in New York, and I can't remember the name. Was one of Verlin Maynard's brother or cousin, that side of the family, but they are related to us. So he called me one day. He said, you might not know me, but I am who I am, and I'm one of the guys who helped Loughton Sargeant survive that day. It was him, Malcolm Simmons, and mentioned one or two other guys. But as you know, during that time, Livingston was the top cricketer.
Yeah.
The top cricketer around.
Probably in the Leeward Islands.
Yeah, period.
Probably in the
Combined Islands.
Combined Islands. Yeah. Leeward and Windward Islands. Yeah.
Livingston Sargeant. So he had actually given up. And these guys tell him, no, Sarge, you can't.
He was swimming?
He was swimming, but he was not a strong swimmer.
Okay.
But he had given up. He was like, he had given up. And these guys gave him a drum or whatever it was, and they are the ones who helped him along. Yeah. If not, he wouldn't have been here. Wow. But those guys, so luckily he was like the great cricketer, and these guys knew that. I mean, no way, Sarge, you can't, you're a NEVIS hero. You can't. And that's how he survived. And so I just give him a big hug, and we're like, man, that was one of the saddest days, even though I was 10 years old, one of the saddest days of my life. And then what happened after the sun went down and pretty much the search was over for survivors, they brought us in. Actually, I heard, from what I understood, they were taking some people into Charleston, but for me, Sea Hunter brought us over close to Cliff Dallas. No. NEVIS. But over by, what's that beach over there? Cage, we call it Cage, not Cage Bay. Cage Bay?
Mosquito?
Not Mosquito, not that far down.
Not that far down.
So Cage Bay.
Cage Bay?
Yeah, around that area, yeah. They brought us to shore there, and then from there they transported us to the hospital. And I remember me going to the hospital, and they were, making sure, check your vital signs, and Dr. Kennedy Simmons.
He was there?
He was the one who checked me. I never forget that. Even today when I see him, he don't remember. Because he was he was treated so many people. But I told him, I thank him every time I see him for being there, and he was the only doctor at NEVIS that day.
Oh, he was working in NEVIS?
He was working in NEVIS as the only doctor that day.
Wow.
Because the one doctor that we had, from what I understood, it was a doctor whose term, I think it was a Jamaican doctor, and her term was over. And she asked Dr. Simmons to kind of fill in because there was nobody there.
Oh.
Yeah, so he filled in I think he was maybe there for like a few days before the Christina went down.
Wow.
But that day, August 1st, 1970, he was the only doctor. He was the only doctor in NEVIS on that day. And I always thank him to this day. And the impact of Christina for me was not felt until really after the fact. Because that night, I had a nightmare. I dreamt the whole thing over.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I stayed by my aunt, Domat's mom. When I stayed by them that night, didn't stay by my grandmother, and I dreamt the whole incident over, from beginning to end. It was very, very scary, very real and very scary.
Wow.
Yeah, and then after that, man, it was like, I mean, I found out that I had friends. I mean, Ozzy Tyson, who survived, Ozzy's brother, two brothers, man, two young guys, Dave and Erskine, two of the best young swimmers in Cotton. And they were probably 8 and 9 years old, around that, they're a little younger than I was. But they were strong swimmers, very good. Both of them died. And their mother also died. Yeah. And then up the street from me, Vida Jones. Vida was just a year or two older than me. Vida died, and her mother, Olga Jones, died, you know? And then my best friend, Lanyon Davis, you mean, my age, we all in class together, he died.
Did you know he was on the boat?
I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
Didn't know. It's after the fact. You know, a lot of people, as a matter of fact, Christina was like the beginning of the end for me in NEVIS. I mean, I went to Charleston Secondary School for a year. One of the greatest time I had in NEVIS in terms of, especially cricket, you know, because we used to play, and you know, them guys, I know they tell you the story all the time. When I go to bat, nobody can get me out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And you had Willett. Willett used to work at the gas station. There was a Texaco gas station right down. And Willett would just stay there every day. All through lunch and even after school. And them guys, they can't get me out, right?
You know, the funny thing, if Sarge had stayed in NEVIS, I think he would have made the West Indies team. A lot of people say that. He was that good, you know? So, it's quite an experience giving us here, Sarge. Well, what about, do you think you had any post-traumatic syndrome, effects from it? That kind of thing? Like, well, back then we didn't call it that.
I know.
You know, you think he affected you?
That's what I'm telling you. I think the effect of Christina happened to me like way after the fact, because at 10 years old, you don't understand the true impact. But as I grow older, you know when it really hit me? When Whitman Brown published the first book, that first Christina book that came out.
Yeah, I remember the book.
Back in the 80s, I think.
Yeah, I read that book.
And I got a copy and I read the book. And in reading the book, because that's the first time I ever saw the names on paper. Okay. And you saw the amount of people who died and people who I knew well as a little boy. You know? I remember like Ira and Lester Nisbet, they grew up in, their father, Bertie used to be, he's from St. Kitts, but he used to come to Cotton and he used to always take pictures. He was like the main, always a camera taking pictures. Okay. When I saw his name, man, gone. Then another young lady, Asinette, I forget what Asinette's last name. I used to, you know, like as a little boy, you have a crush on somebody.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of my first early crush. And then I never saw Asinette ever again, but in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, she probably went to England or wherever. And when I look in the book, Asinette was on Christina. Never knew.
Wow.
You know?
All these years.
All them years, man. Never knew. I mean, people that you grew up with, all you knew that you no longer saw them. And it was not unusual back in those days because a lot of the time people go to England, they go to America, they go to Virgin Islands. Until Whitman Brown published that book. And I started reading the names. And that's when that really hit me. And you remember, that book came out around the time when the Titanic movie came out.
Yes.
And I remember going to the Titanic, man. And you know me, Obi, I don't really like movies. So I will look at the movie and 15 minutes, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah,
and I wake back up, right?
Yeah.
But the Titanic was like over 3 hours long. And I didn't miss a second.
Yes.
Because the Titanic, let me put it this way, the Christina was a mini Titanic.
Oh, for real?
I'm telling you, because think about it. I mean, the Titanic was on its inaugural voyage, but the Christina, basically folks were on there to celebrate, to have a good...
Yes.
The folks for Christina was coming to NEVIS to celebrate August Monday weekend. I mean, that was the main reason for the boat to really be that overcrowded. Not that The boat was never overcrowded before. But that particular weekend, folks were coming to NEVIS for the horse races, for the boat races, whatever was happening in NEVIS that weekend. That's why folks were coming. So to see that, the Titanic, and to see the deaths and the survival, and I mean, even though it was a different climate, and it just evoked a lot of memories, man. I mean, that was Christina for me, you know? Christina is like surviving. I mean, I don't know, man. I always say that I just felt my grandfather's spirit, man, from the time, because, you know, funny enough, I was one of his closest grandchildren, right? We grew up I lived with him. And everything that he do, everywhere he go, I go with him, I'm there with him. And at age 10, I got sick with jaundice. So I was in Alexandria Hospital, and I knew that he was having some back issues and whatever, but didn't know the extent. So he actually died while I was in the hospital.
Wow.
And before I knew he died, and this is the realest thing ever happened to me, Obi, I was in the hospital, and I saw my grandfather came to the hospital window and took his hat off and started hitting me and saying, "Loughton, get up, get up." Serious, just, I mean, the realest thing I've ever seen. And when I opened my eyes, it was the nurse that came to give me my medication.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a dream, but I'm just saying, it's like he came in my dream just telling me to get up. And then a few days later, I'm listening to ZIZ, I'm hearing that announcement. You know, you're hearing the music and all this kind of stuff. We're here to announce the death of, but he didn't, at the time I caught it in the middle. And he keeps saying that he leave to mourn, and all these names going down, and I started hearing familiar names. I'm like aunts and uncles, right? And at the end, they mentioned Loughton Sargeant. My grandfather had died. And because we were so close, nobody told me.
Wow.
But I had aunts and uncles from Canada and all over coming to visit me in the hospital. And I was wondering, you know, what they doing in NEVIS, you know? Why they come to visit me, you know? But my grandfather had died, had no idea.
Wow.
So when I heard that, I ran out the hospital, full speed, man, and they had to come and grab me back. And so I just carried that with me all my life. But that day when Christina went down, I always say,
It was him.
I mean, I always have to give God all the glory, but through God, it was him there that delivered me, in the sense that I didn't jump off of the Christina. I didn't jump off the boat. I actually don't know how I got in the water, because the boat was partially enclosed. So a lot of people got trapped, right? I didn't swim away from where the Christina was to say, let me swim to land. It took me down. And I didn't do anything to escape from when Christina took me down. I don't know how you know? And then while in the water, for that bench to come right in, the bench came right in front of me, Obi, and Christina had already long gone. You know what I mean? So all these things that happen, for me, I'm saying, it's a blessing for me to be alive. I'm so happy to get another 50-year lease on my life.
Yes.
And to be here, able to be here to share this story. A lot of people who probably know me and see me on a daily basis, even in NEVIS, never knew I was on Christina.
Yeah.
I never talk about it. For me, it was just a regular day. One of my classmates in Charleston Secondary High School, I forget his first name, but his last name was Elliot. His father was a principal. His father died on Christina.
Wow.
And I never forget him, because we used to feel so sorry for him, man, you know? Can you imagine losing your father at that young age? You know, your father was like, you know, the person to really that mold him and he looked up to. No father, you know? I mean, a lot of those guys in Jessups, a lot of, I think I remember Osman and those guys. I think their father was on Christina, the Farrell, Mr. Farrell.
Yeah, I think Osman said that,
Yeah, Mr. Farrell was also on Christina. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. I mean, the Christina impacted every single household in NEVIS.
Yeah.
No one was left spared.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in Cotton Ground, these two brothers, King and Hobby. Hobby was blind. King was, um, I don't know what you call him that, but he was like a butcher. And he sold
Oh,
livestock.
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, I know what
Yeah,
you mean. Yeah, yeah.
he go down and he was very rigid, eh? Everybody used to kind of afraid King. But Hobie was blind. He took care of King. And King was one of the guys that went down on the boat. Yeah, man. And so nobody was left to take care of Hobie. I remember Eugene from Ginger. I think Eugene's name is the Pemberton. I believe Eugene is the Pemberton. But Eugene had to actually, because being family, they sent Eugene to Cotton Ground so he could be with Hobie. So you had this kind of intermingle, yes. People, family moving around and neighbors taking care of neighbors, you know? It was like, wow.
What was NEVIS like after, like months, years after the Christina disaster?
Well, for me, like again, as I said, 10 years old, you don't understand the true impact of what you're seeing. But I can tell you, it was not the same. The energy and the vibrancy of NEVIS, it kind of died. You know, it was like we were in mourning, deep mourning. You know, and it took a while. What used to keep me going, and most of the young boys in the village and just overall, was cricket.
Was playing cricket.
Cricket, not just playing, but NEVIS cricket. Because back then you had guys like Earl Barrett, who came to mind, and he prematurely left because he would have been, even before, I'm talking right before Willett, he would have been the next great all-rounder next batsman from NEVIS. And he went to St. Kitts as a police officer and got an opportunity to come to the United States, and that was it. And after Earl Barrett, El Camilo Willett. I mean, Willett was the best thing since apple pie for us, man. I mean, but because remember, we still had Loughton Sargeant and Vance Emery, these guys who actually were the foundation at the time. But a young guy like Willett, that when Willett came in the mix, it was like.
So you think will it help to inspire and help to heal?
No
NEVIS?
question, man. I mean, yeah. We already had Loughton Sargeant as a hero. And then Christina happened. And then here comes this young guy from town. I think Government Road, right?
Yeah.
Here comes this young guy, man. Brilliant. Willett was like a natural, man. I mean, we never seen nothing like that. You know? So it was not even a matter of that would Willett make the West Indies side. It was a matter of when. It was a matter of when. Because I used to go and look at Willett. Like when we play St. Kitts, I used to feel sorry for Mountstrat. I used to feel sorry for Mountstrat because Willett, when we played Mountstrat, Willett used to average like 6-7 wickets. They just couldn't play him. You know? And then before I left, the one game that I recall vividly, before I left NEVIS, and it was 1972, NEVIS played Antigua in Grove Park back then. And it showed the power and class of the NEVIS cricket team. Because Antigua had a very good side coming up. You had Andy Roberts, Hugo, Vivi Richard, Rowan Edwards, Gene Gould, all these big name guys at the time. And Loughton Sargeant put on a display. He made 132 that day. And it was like glorious, man. And you had young guys like Derek Parry. I just made the side. As a matter of fact, Andy Roberts had knocked him down that game. Hit him a bumper right at his nose. Knock him down clean. And then but Antigua had nothing over NEVIS. And it's out of those kind of competitive games that like the Vivi Richards and Andy Roberts and these guys actually bloom. You know? But they had to play up to the standard of what NEVIS had. They couldn't beat NEVIS back then. But those are the things that actually mold me into who I became. I mean, cricket up until 2008 was my passion. I played cricket against some of the best cricketers from not just the world, but the West Indies. When I tell people, I mean, I played against like Wes Hall and Charlie Griffith and Seymour Nurse. And these guys, they were in their 40s, I mean older, but I played against them to see them. I played against Irvin Shillingford and Grayson Shillingford, Norbert Phillip, and these guys from the Windward Island. I played against Vivi Richards, Andy Rabas. I mean, the cream of the crop from the Leeward Islands. They used to come to the Virgin Islands. And I, as a youngster, teenager, was one of the best young cricketers in the Virgin Islands, and specifically St. Croix, back in the 80s. Yeah, before I left for college. You know? So that was my story in terms of the Christina, and like, it's history after that. You know, I went to school in Hampton University and Old Dominion University, then came to Washington, D.C. in 1984 and worked for the federal government as an electrical engineer for 35 and a half years.
I know he's retired.
I just retired in December 31st, so life is good, you know? And I'm alive.
What do you think about Paris' speech?
Oh,
yesterday?
Wow. You want to put me on the spot? You want to put me on the spot?
Not just about how the history of it.
But I looked at the program yesterday, and I want to thank the NEVIS Island Administration for spearheading that effort. That was a great show of unity between both islands, and all of the speakers were great. But for some reason, former Premier Parry kind of hit it close to home for me. I mean, it was everything that he spoke, I lived it.
Yes.
Everything he spoke, I lived it. So I could have related every single word that came out of his mouth. So it was something about that speech that I hope that every Nevisian, whether home or abroad, get an opportunity to listen to it. Because it kind of brings us to where we are today. You know, and the importance of us to be one, to be Nevisian, not political party. You know, we are Nevisians first, and we really need to get back to that. You know, so that was very inspirational yesterday.
Okay, one thing I want to do, something is a little bit controversial. I always see it as almost like the federal government had some blame in this whole thing because of lack of enforcing the rules and making sure that the boat is not overcrowded or anything. Was there any commission set up or any investigation? Do you think there should have been like a fund to repay people or reparations for survivors and that kind of thing?
Very, very, very good question, Obi. As a little boy, and as a survivor, personally, I wasn't looking for anything, but I saw the impact of families. I mean, I always have to go, Ozzy came to mind, because Ozzy lost his mother, and she was a single mother. Can you imagine? She had 6 boys. It was, I mean, 6 boys that I remember. There was no girls. And so he lost 2 brothers and the mother, who was the breadwinner.
Wow.
So then you're left to fend for yourself. You and your 3 other brothers were left to figure out things. And Ozzy was only 12, right?
Wow.
And I remember there was a lot of complaining back then that stuff was coming into the Federation, whether it was money, whether it was supplies, whatever. And I know we had a little session a few days ago, and Whitman Brown did mention that possibly there was something, but it was not done properly. But as far as I'm concerned, there was none. There was no remuneration. There was nothing that was given to assist families who were in distress back then, as far as I know. So 50 years later,
do you think it's too late to put
I don't think it's too late at all, because I mean, to me, the impact of Christina is still felt today in NEVIS. I mean, to me, you have families and offsprings who still struggle to this day. You still struggle to this day.
So like a Christina fund or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the speakers yesterday
they talk about that.
I know Premier Mark Brantley mentioned a few things that they're going to put in place, like some scholarship and possibly a Christina disaster fund that would assist. So I think that's a good start. I mean, it's better late than never.
Okay.
But it's unfortunate that me as a youngster at that time, and maybe that's what created a lot of the bad feeling and rift between St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yes. Yes.
Because we felt that the federal government, at the time we said the Nevis, the St. Kitts government, really didn't give that much about whether we continue to survive or not. And we saw it. And out of that, I remember so well when the NRP party was formed.
Yes.
Even as a little boy, I used to go around with the motorcade all around at 10 years old. I remember Wilmer Jones, Dormer Jones' father. He was our transportation. So one big family, we would be in the car and we go around Nevis, the NRP banner. And I never forget those days. Never forget those days.
You think, I don't know if it's true, but I think I saw somewhere that there's no memorial or anything in St. Kitts.
Yeah.
You think there should be one?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people were buried down there.
Yeah. And I think Premier Brantley again alluded to that in one of his speeches. Yes, he mentioned that should be something that should be looked at. And I want to thank Stevenson Manners for one of the lead voices out there.
Yes.
Pushing, absolutely. And he's been very instrumental in a lot of the program, the 50th commemoration of Christina program this year.
Yeah, I see him.
So, Stevenson, thank you for all that you have been doing, and continue. Don't give up. And I think that sooner than later there will be a memorial in St. Kitts, because again, for me, I didn't know the impact until I read that book. There was a lot of people from St. Kitts.
There was a lot of people
who were impacted, who died, even some of the survivors who died and survived. So why not? Why not?
Okay. All right, I think we're going to close off here. I hope you all enjoyed Sarge's story. I'm going to look at some of the comments and see if anybody have any questions here. I'm not seeing any questions. Looking to see if any questions. Let's see people. This is somebody said it. Gavin says a powerful interview, Sarge. Thanks.
Thank you.
Somebody said Russ Dunta from Newtown was on the boat also.
Wow.
My dad never said anything about funds. Okay, somebody was just responding to what you were saying. Somebody saying the speech was awesome, talking about Paris speech, and then talking about Paris speech. Let's see. Somebody said the book by what's his name again? Whitman Brown. Whitman Brown. It should be at the library, and I think you could buy it on Amazon. For anybody who want to get it.
Let me respond to that.
Okay.
Seriously, I mean. We grew up in a culture and environment where we always were taught stories from Europe and America. We were never taught African history. We were never really taught Caribbean history. The only thing I remember learning about the Caribbean was the capital of the Caribbean islands, the largest mountain peak, and at the time maybe the population. That was the extent of it, right? Now here is this tragedy, Christina disaster. Can you imagine 50 years later we're talking about it and there's nothing in our educational system
talking about it.
Even, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And you know something, Sarge? I would venture to say more people, probably from the Caribbean, of course, maybe even Nevis and St. Kitts, know more about Titanic.
Exactly,
than Christina. And Christina was probably one of the biggest maritime disaster in the Caribbean.
In the
the whole English-speaking Caribbean.
Absolutely.
I think it's the biggest one up to this day. And this is something which probably should know more about, and people should, especially in terms of culture and academics and everything, we probably should know more about it, and a lot more should be said about it. So again, I would like to thank Steve Manners for pushing this, and the Nevis Island Assembly for actually putting this together. It was really good yesterday to see everybody coming together and doing this thing. And I hope you all enjoyed it. for sure. I'll look to see if any more questions here before I leave. Somebody was asking, was the title of the book? I think the book is just Christina Disaster. I think that's what it was.
I think the title of the book was The Christina Disaster in Retrospect, I believe.
Okay, and I think he did a follow-up.
He did like, there are three editions. There are three editions.
Okay.
The first one was the Christina Disaster in Retrospect, and I think the second was the Christina Disaster Revisited, and then the third one was the Christina Disaster 42nd edition. I think it happened during the 42nd year of the disaster.
Okay.
So I have all three books.
Oh, you have all three books?
Very good read, yeah.
Okay, I read the first one, and I think I read the follow-up. Let me see if anybody else have any other question. Somebody say you need to make some shirts. I don't know about that. Where can the book be purchased? I said you could get it on Amazon, I think.
Yes, I think Amazon.
You could get it on Amazon.
Outlet.
Just looking to see if anybody have any question. Okay. Somebody say great history. May God continue to bless you, Sarge. Somebody said that. Somebody said Mr. Farrell was not on the boat, but Mr. Swanston was.
Oh, Swanston. That's
Mr. Swanston.
Thank you for the correction.
That was Lynette Farrell.
Thank you for the correction. It's actually Mr. Swanston, because I remember now the dress-up connection. I remember that.
Yeah, Mr.
So
Swanston.
thanks for the correction.
Yeah. So he said Cotton Ground had a great loss. A couple of people correcting you, Sarge. Not Farrell, Swanston.
Yeah.
More people corrected you. James Elliott, you said the principal.
Right, yes.
Somebody said they heard Kelsick was on it too. I don't know who Kelsick that is.
Which one, Ian? Possibly.
I don't know.
He did survive.
Somebody said, and when you look at the boat, right? Because somebody make a comment here saying that the boat was very small.
Well, look, for me,
it looked like a big boat.
At 10 years old, the boat looked big to me. But when I saw the first picture, like I said, that book that Dr. Whitman Brown, they had the picture of Christina, and I'm saying, no, that can't be the Christina that I know. Look very small, but believe me, if you were on the board, you would see that they pack the people in. And that's just people, Obi. You talk about goods, and cargo. They had just as much cargo as people. I don't know how they did it. And it was all metal, solid metal from top to bottom.
Oh, the boat was made of metal?
Iron, total iron. If you see, look at the Christian at the bottom of the ocean right now. It's all iron.
Okay.
Yeah, metal.
Okay. Anyway, I'm going to scroll back to some more, see if I see any more that I miss. Any more comments? You say you look a lot like Livingston.
Oh yeah, well I hear that all the time.
Somebody say if you could recall all of it, you must have had a lasting impact. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna log off in a little bit. Thank all you guys for checking in and looking at the live. So, somebody said next time you're home, you should visit teacher Frank Morton.
Yes.
Frank Morton, he survived as well. Wait, Frank Morton got to be like in his 90s.
I'm not sure how old he is now, but yeah.
Yeah, Frank Morton.
Yeah,
he survived.
He's the older guy, yeah.
So somebody's saying that.
That'll be great.
Somebody telling me to save the interview. I will save the interview. Great interview. Okay. Nidhi, I see your comment. Nidhi.
Oh, Nidhi, okay.
Thank you for doing this. I've never heard anyone speak about the encounter. I had an uncle who died on it.
Wow.
She is Nidhi was Panko. You remember Panko?
I remember Panko, yeah.
Panko is her grandfather.
Wow.
So
wow. Yeah,
everybody, and these are Gingerland people.
Absolutely.
Think about that.
Yes,
okay,
yes,
so it's everybody.
Yes. Wow.
Let me see. Somebody say every time I catch a boat, I remember the disaster. Okay. Somebody say, me ask Obi, you beard sexy. Somebody asked if it was raining.
No. Christina, August 1st, 1970 was one of the most beautiful days that you could experience. There was no cloud in the air and the water was calm, beautiful, calm, no waves.
Okay.
It's a beautiful day.
Okay. So he asked if it was a norm to carry that many passengers.
Well,
They used to overcrowd it all the time?
yeah, I mean, to me, I didn't see, that was for me, I've been on Christina several times before, and
It was normal like that?
it always, to me, it was just a regular Saturday going back to NEVIS. But in hindsight now, like I said, I was on the lower deck. I don't know what, from what I understand, upstairs was the party deck, the upper deck.
The adults were upstairs?
That's where the big boys then were.
Yeah.
All of the, the real hangout,
How long used to take to get to NEVIS?
Back then, okay, the 11 miles, I would say around 50, 55 minutes, possibly around that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely slower than what it takes today. I mean, like you say, you could take Harry Queen and get to St. Kitts by what?
40 minutes.
40 minutes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He said Ozzy Tyson gave us the story. He said that only once a year our children hear about it. It was the last trip for the day. He had nightmares from that trauma. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. And I'm going to save it and you guys could come back and look at it later. Probably tell people about it, share it with other people. I think it's great history. It's something that we should all know about. Every person from St. Kitts and Nevis and the wider Caribbean should know about this story. We all are told about Titanic. We all know about Titanic. There are many movies made about it. We should know our story too and what helped to propel us to where we are now. So thanks again. I'm going to log out.